They left for a fantasy. Reality hit harder than they expected. They thought they were escaping boredom, escaping routine, escaping a relationship that felt too ordinary, too predictable. They believed that something better was out there, a passion that burned brighter, a partner who truly understood them, a life that felt more exciting, more fulfilling, more alive. Pop culture sold them the dream, the soulmate, the whirlwind affair, the spontaneous decision to leave it all behind in pursuit of a deeper love, a truer connection. And for a moment, it felt real. The rush, the secrecy, the promise of something new. It was intoxicating. But what they didn't see coming was reality. The reality of bills and schedules, of differences and disappointments, of guilt that doesn't go away and trust that never fully arrives. They chased a fantasy. And when the fantasy faded, what was left was a life far messier than the one they tried to escape. This is the story of why people leave for something they think will make them happier, and why, more often than not, it doesn't. Why do people walk away from something real, for something that only feels better? It begins with a simple error, a misjudgment in what we think will make us happy. Psychologists call it miswanting, the tendency to chase things we believe will bring joy, but that ultimately leave us empty. We imagine a different life, a better partner, a more exciting relationship. But what we're really doing is forecasting the future with emotions, not facts, and emotions lie. Instead of seeing the full picture, the arguments, the compromises, the late-night responsibilities, we see only the highs. We idealize what could be, while minimizing everything it would take to make it last. There's also the comparison trap. It's not just about what we want, it's about what we think others have. Social media shows us curated love stories, perfect couples, perfect moments, and slowly, we begin to feel like we're missing out. We call this the grass is greener syndrome. It's the mindset that somewhere else, someone else, life is better. And that mindset devalues what we already have. We stop appreciating, we start imagining, and then we become convinced that change, any change, must be the answer. And sometimes it's not even about comparison or boredom, it's about limerence, that intense emotional obsession with someone new. It doesn't always come from a failing relationship. Sometimes it just shows up. The chemistry, the spark, the feeling of being seen. It's powerful, and it tricks the brain into believing this is real love. But more often than not, what people are really falling into isn't love. It's a story they've written in their mind, a fantasy that fills in all the blanks, with everything they think they've been missing. And that's where the trouble begins. Sometimes the problem isn't the relationship, it's the story we're telling ourselves about it. You may feel like you found the one, but how do you know it's real and not just a fantasy dressed up as love? Here are 6 signs that what you're experiencing might not be grounded in reality. 1. You focus on potential, not reality. You're in love with who they could be, who they might become, but right now they're not that person, and deep down, you know it. 2. You romanticize the past. You remember the good moments, the laughs, the passion, the promises, but you gloss over the arguments, the cold silences, the patterns that never changed. 3. You make excuses. You explain away their hurtful behavior. You tell yourself they didn't mean it or they'll change, even when the same issues repeat themselves. 4. You over-explain the relationship, to your friends, to your family. You find yourself constantly defending your partner's choices, even when no one asked. 5. You're persistently unhappy, but you rationalize it. You convince yourself it's just a phase, that it'll get better if you just try harder, but trying harder doesn't change anything. 6. You carry the emotional weight. You do all the work. You initiate every serious conversation. You soothe every fight. You're holding the relationship together by yourself. If these sound familiar, you might not be in love with the person in front of you. You might be in love with an illusion, a fantasy you've built to avoid facing the truth. It starts as a thought, a what if, a small, quiet pull towards someone new, someone who makes you feel alive again. And then, that thought turns into action. For a few, the fantasy becomes more than just imagination. They leave. They walk away from a marriage, a long-term partner, a shared life, all for the promise of something better. But how often does that gamble actually pay off? Not very. In one large study, only 3% of men who had affairs actually left their wife for the other woman. And of those who did, most divorced within a few years. Some didn't even make it past the honeymoon phase. Therapists and researchers agree affair relationships are built on adrenaline, on secrecy, escape, and excitement. But that foundation? It doesn't survive the weight of real life. Only 5 to 7% of affairs end in marriage, and more than 75% of those marriages end in divorce. Why? Because once the thrill fades, there's no history, no foundation, no trust. The very thing that brought them together, betrayal, now becomes the thing that tears them apart. And in the quiet moments, the guilt sets in. The questions begin, and the fantasy starts to crack. They didn't trade up, they traded differently, and often for something far more fragile. When people leave for a fantasy, they rarely imagine what comes next. They expect more passion, more connection, more freedom, but what they get is a reality that hits harder than they ever thought it would. Here's why. 1. The relationship starts without trust. It began with secrecy, with betrayal, and deep down, both people know if they cheated with you, they might cheat on you. 2. The patterns repeat. Escaping one relationship doesn't erase personal baggage. The same arguments, insecurities, and avoidance resurface, just with a different face. 3. The thrill fades. What once felt like a high now feels ordinary. The adrenaline is gone, and what's left is the reality of daily life. 4. There's no shared history, no inside jokes, no traditions, no emotional muscle built from hard times together. 5. Personal growth stalls. Instead of working on themselves, they simply change the scenery, but their problems followed them. 6. Guilt creeps in. The damage done to a partner, to kids, to extended family can't be ignored. Shame has a long shadow. 7. The sacrifices were uneven. One person gave up everything, the other not as much. That imbalance breeds resentment. 8. The expectations were unrealistic. They thought the passion would last forever. They believed love alone was enough. But real relationships demand more than desire. 9. Social support disappears. Friends choose sides. Family withdraws. Suddenly it's just the two of them, and every conflict feels bigger in the silence. 10. Loyalty becomes a question. If trust was broken once, can it ever really be rebuilt? 11. There's no roadmap. Unlike a marriage that evolved over years, this new relationship has no structure, no shared vision, no rhythm. 12. Children feel the shock. They didn't ask for this. They lose stability, routines, sometimes respect for a parent, and it all leaves a mark. 13. Regret sets in. Not immediately, but eventually. Many begin to realize they didn't solve the problem. They just changed its shape. Infidelity doesn't just affect two people. It ripples out, touching children, families, friendships, and even future relationships. For the person who cheats, the thrill is often short-lived, and what follows is a heavy emotional cost. Guilt, not just for the betrayal, but for the pain caused to a partner, to kids, to themselves. Shame, it can't be buried forever. It creeps in quietly, in conversations, in silence, in the way others look at them, or stop looking at all. Stress and anxiety, the fear of being judged, the pressure to make the new relationship work even when it's already starting to crack. And for the one betrayed, the pain cuts even deeper. Anger, confusion, loss of identity. A partner they trusted is suddenly a stranger, and nothing feels safe anymore. Some develop symptoms similar to trauma, hypervigilance, sleeplessness, emotional shutdown. The wound isn't just emotional, it's psychological. Then, there are the children. Too often overlooked. They don't just witness the breakup, they live it. They may blame themselves, act out, withdraw, struggle in school, carry silent insecurities into their own future relationships. And let's not forget the financial fallout. Dividing homes, paying legal fees, supporting two households. It's not just emotionally expensive, it's financially devastating for many. And even for those who believed leaving was the right choice, regret isn't uncommon. A 2024 study found that only a third of divorced individuals felt sure they'd made the right call. The rest struggled with loneliness, co-parenting stress, and a dating world they weren't ready for. Because even if the fantasy looked better, the reality often doesn't feel worth the price paid to get there. Not everyone handles heartbreak the same way, and when it comes to rebounds, men and women often follow different paths. Men, research shows, are more likely to jump into a new relationship quickly. Why? Because many men have smaller emotional support networks. They turn to a new partner, not just for affection, but for emotional survival. They're also more likely to hold on to emotional ties with an ex, even while moving on physically. Add to that a cultural script that discourages vulnerability, and the result is often avoidance instead of healing. Rebound relationships, for men in particular, can feel like a solution, a distraction, a way to avoid the pain. But underneath the surface, those wounds remain open. And, honestly, unresolved pain has a habit of leaking into the next relationship. For women, the story's a little different. They often take longer to enter a new relationship, but when they do, they may carry fears too. Fear for their children, fear of financial instability, and fear of making the same mistake twice. Yet despite these fears, studies show women initiate more divorces. Why? Because they're often more willing to leave an unsatisfying marriage, even if the consequences are steep. Still, both men and women share one thing in common after chasing fantasy regret. Roughly 80% of unfaithful spouses who leave for someone else later wish they hadn't. For men, regret often stems from loneliness and difficulty forming a new bond. For women, it's often tied to the impact on children and the burden of starting over. The rebound, the new partner, the escape. None of it can substitute the deep inner work that healing requires, because no matter the gender, if you don't address what's broken within, you'll carry it into every new beginning. When a relationship ends, especially one built on fantasy, the aftermath can be disorienting. You want closure, you crave answers, you think one more conversation might fix the chaos, but often the most powerful path forward is silence. It's called the no contact rule, and it's exactly what it sounds like. No texts, no calls, no checking their social media, no accidental likes, no staying friends, just distance. Why? Because clarity doesn't come from staying connected, it comes from stepping away. No contact isn't about punishment, it's about healing. It gives your brain space to recalibrate, to detach from the highs and lows of emotional dependency. It stops the cycle of mixed signals, late-night conversations, and false hope. And most importantly, it helps you see things clearly, without their influence, without their narrative, just your truth. For some, no contact might need boundaries, not silence, especially when co-parenting or working together. But even then, boundaries matter. Keep communication limited, keep it respectful, keep it focused. And when the urge comes to reach out, pause. Ask yourself, am I seeking connection or avoiding discomfort? Use that moment to journal. Call a friend. Go outside. Choose growth over relapse. Because healing isn't passive, it's active, and no contact is one of the most active choices you can make for your emotional freedom. Fantasies are seductive, they promise escape, they offer the illusion of effortless happiness, but what they rarely provide is peace. If you've ever found yourself daydreaming about a different partner, a different life, a clean break from everything familiar, you're not alone. But you don't have to follow that impulse. You can pause, reflect, and choose differently. Here's how. First, challenge your thoughts. Just because you think something doesn't make it true. All or nothing thinking, comparisons, worst-case predictions, they distort reality. Learn to question your own mind. Ask, is this really about the other person, or something unresolved in me? Second, practice gratitude and mindfulness. Start noticing what's already good. Write it down. Say it out loud. Gratitude shifts focus from what's missing to what's meaningful. Third, step away from the scroll. Social media is a highlight reel, and the more you compare, the less content you'll feel. Take a break. Reconnect with your actual life, not someone else's filtered one. Fourth, understand your attachment style. Are you afraid of abandonment? Do you push people away when they get too close? Therapy can help decode these patterns and keep you from chasing connection in unhealthy ways. Fifth, if you're in a relationship, get real help. Couples counseling isn't a last resort, it's a chance to rebuild, to speak honestly, to identify unmet needs before someone walks away. Sixth, stop expecting perfection. Limerence fades. Every love story settles into real life. That doesn't mean it's broken. It means it's becoming something deeper. List your partner's real strengths, not their potential, not your fantasies, but who they truly are. And finally, consider the cost. What will you lose if you walk away? The children, the shared memories, the future you once planned. Is the trade-off truly worth it? Because the grass isn't greener, it's just different grass, and it still needs watering. They left for a fantasy, but reality hit harder than they expected, because fantasy always fades. It's built on what could be, not what is. It avoids the hard work. It skips the uncomfortable truths, and when the novelty wears off, so does the illusion. What's left is a messier life, a quieter kind of pain, one not dressed in passion but in consequence. Affairs rarely last, divorces often come with regret, and the thrill people chased turns into trust issues, guilt, and broken homes. But it doesn't have to be that way. When discomfort shows up, you can face it. When fantasy tempts you, you can pause. And when you want to run, you can stay and grow. The truth is, no relationship is perfect. No partner will complete you. But the work you do, on yourself, in your partnership, with your past, that's what creates fulfillment. Real love is built, not found. It's shared in early mornings, quiet forgiveness, and honest conversations that don't always feel good, but build something strong. So if you're standing at the edge, wondering if the grass is greener on the other side, remember, fantasy is easy, reality is earned, and the life you're searching for might already be right in front of you. Want more content like this? Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.